Why is there sea salt in Utah?
Great question. And the term sea salt is a little interesting because if we went back in the 1970s and you went to the store and you bought a brand that said sea salt, chances are that was going to be a little better product than maybe a canister that said table salt. Marketing kind of took on that and just ran with it. And now you can walk into a health food store or a grocery store and there might be a product that says sea salt on it, but that sea salt can be completely processed, completely demineralized. It can come from any body of water that is sea-based. When we say salt today, let's agree that we're going to talk about sodium and chloride. Like the definition of salt in chemistry is an acid and a base that are bound together. So salts are magnesium sulfate, potassium chloride. So when we say salt, we're going to talk about sodium and chloride.
All right, Darryl, here we are on the Know Your Physio podcast. It's an honor to have you here on the show. I'm a huge fan of your product, Redmond Salt, and I'm excited to dig in with you today into a delicious conversation about what's been making my food as delicious as it is past few months and weeks, having my Redmond Salt and my hydration and all my steaks and all that good stuff. So I'm excited to dig in with you, man, and really understand what it is that makes your salt so damn good. So welcome.
Thank you, Andres. I'm so excited to be on the program today. Hopefully we can cover some things that are interesting to your listeners. I know sometimes people think that salt is boring or there couldn't be a lot to talk about when it comes to salt. And I hope that today we can show that's not the case, because salt is a fascinating topic. It's changed the world. It's changed the world landscape. And as you point out, it's essential for life. And so hopefully we get into some of that fun stuff today.
Awesome.
So proximity is actually probably how I got started originally. I grew up in a little town in central Utah called Redmond, and the town is named after these 3 red mounds that are behind the town. Hence the name Red Mound, or Redmond is where I grew up. And it so happened that my grandfather and his brother had a farm just north of town that back in the 1950s, that farm wasn't doing very well. There was a big drought that year. And during World War II, my grandfather was a riveter and then a business manager at McDonnell Douglas in California. And his brother was a miner during the war at Kennecott, the really big copper mine here in Utah. So after the war, they wanted to move back together and kind of raise their kids near each other on their dad's farm. And so they started this farm, and north and south of their farm, there was a little outcropping of salt that the Native Americans had actually harvested long before the settlers had moved west. And so these little outcroppings of salt north and south of their farm that the livestock and the deer had pawed at and eaten at. So they knew there was salt there. And then when this drought hit in the 1950s, they figured, there's salt north and south of their farm. There's got to be salt underneath. And so they took a big steel rod and pounded it down through the field. And lo and behold, about 30 feet from the surface, which is probably part of the reason the farm didn't do all that well, there was this massive ancient sea deposit that was just there under the farm. And so back in the 1950s, they started to sell this salt initially for road salt to keep the roads safe because it melts the ice off the roads. And they sold it for farmers. And what the farmers noticed was the livestock not only seemed to prefer this ancient sea salt from under the farm as opposed to the big white blocks that you'd buy down at the feed store, but the animals seemed to do better on it.
That's incredible, man. That's incredible. What a great story. And I mean, I hope that nutritionist that changed the game for you guys got equity or something. And so I think I know the answer to this question, but why is there sea salt in Utah?
Great question. And the term sea salt is a little interesting because if we went back in the 1970s and you went to the store and you bought a brand that said sea salt, chances are that was going to be a little better product than maybe a canister that said table salt. Marketing kind of took on that and just ran with it. And now you can walk into a health food store or a grocery store and there might be a product that says sea salt on it, But that sea salt can be completely processed, completely demineralized. It can come from any body of water that is sea-based, because salt, at least when we say salt today, let's agree that we're going to talk about sodium and chloride. Like the definition of salt in chemistry is an acid and a base that are bound together. So salts are magnesium sulfate, potassium chloride. So when we say salt, we're going to talk about sodium and chloride.
Okay.
So in salt, which is our bodies are based in sodium and chloride. And all of the seawater occurs as sodium and chloride. Now, there's other trace minerals there, but it's predominantly sodium and chloride. So if we went back 150 million years ago, geologists tell us that this was during the Jurassic era, and this was when Pangaea was all together, and Utah was actually down at sea level. Utah now is at 5,000 feet or more, but then it was at sea level. And there was a depression that occurred that allowed the Arctic Ocean to flood in through Canada and left this massive inland sea as this prehistoric sea flooded the central part of the United States. And it covered all of Utah, parts of Colorado, parts of Idaho, Montana, New Mexico, covered this massive area. If you go to Wikipedia and you look for the Sundance Sea, this is the sea that geologists say was the original seabed that this salt from Utah comes from.
Right. So, I mean, it's a nice play on the idiom. It's like sitting on a gold mine. They were sitting on a salt mine. and now they've really capitalized on it, turned to gold. I mean, it's unbelievable. I've had the chance to follow you guys on Instagram and such, and taking a look at your website, and it's unbelievable how large these salt mines are, or the salt mine is. It's huge. There's no way your dad sent you there all alone. It's massive. It's terrifying.
When people think of mining, they think of these cold, dark, like a coal mine, where you've got a low ceiling and you've got cribbing for support, and they're very dangerous. There could be methane. There's all kinds of challenges with mining. In salt, especially our deposit, it's one that we don't have to deal with a lot of those challenges. So if you were to come out and visit sometime and we take you down into the mine, you'll see no cribbing, there's no structure. It's like driving into the Manhattan Tunnel.
And I really can't recommend this enough. Most people start their day, they don't hydrate, they just go straight for coffee. And so they're getting some liquid, but it's a diuretic. It only continues to dehydrate you. And I can't recommend it enough. Try hydrating with water and plenty of electrolytes in the morning, and just see how energized you become. You feel electric, as you said.
That I love how you start the day with that, because people, I think generally, life coaches and health coaches, even medical professionals, are helping people know the importance of breathing, right? It seems silly that we have to have these classes on deep breathing and how good deep breathing and intentional breath work is. And if you look at our physiology, the most important thing that keeps us alive, is oxygen and the air mixture. If the air was sucked out of the room immediately, you and I, we're not going to last very long. And so in order of importance, we have oxygen, and then we have water, and then we have salt. And those three things are the primary building blocks that keep us alive. And yes, there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of other things that are important. But those three things, if we started every day with resetting the circadian rhythm, with having a big glass of water and salt, we can't get a better way to start the day, because that is the essence of life, is air, water, and then salt.
I do have one more question for you. Actually, two little questions for you. What's your take on pink Himalayan salt? I forgot to ask you this way back when you mentioned Celtic or Celtic sea salt. What's your take on pink Himalayan? And then I have my final question.
So I think potentially it's a great product. I am all for eating locally as much as possible. I think there's great product all around the world. And I think there'd be little reason to take a great product from California and ship it all the way across to China if China has a great source of an avocado, for instance. With the caveat that there's a lot of things that people can do wrong. I think when it comes to salt, there's three questions to ask. what's the source? Actually, before that, I think the first question is who's producing it, because if we know who actually is producing the product, then we can find out the source. Where's it coming from? Is it coming from a current ocean, a Dead Sea? And then the third question is, what's the process? What are they doing to it? How are they extracting it? Are they adding anything? Are they taking anything out? And so when it comes to, let's say, dairy, or let's say it comes to steak, I think if you can know the farmer, know are there hormones, are there processes when it comes to the actual piece of meat? Are they doing any, gas, treating with nitrogen? Are they doing any, food coloring? So know the source, know who's producing it, and know what they're doing to it. And in the Himalayan deposit, it's a massive deposit that's mostly in Pakistan that also stretches up into Nepal. And it's a beautiful deposit, geologically almost identical to the deposit we have here in Utah. But there's dozens of mines. I've heard different numbers, but there's dozens of operators and mines that produce the Himalayan salt. And a lot of it comes out of Pakistan. And there are probably places there where it's done very well. And there's probably places that maybe aren't.
This is extremely helpful, and you're extremely kind, and I really can't thank you enough for your time and for the incredible product that you're helping people get their hands on. It's delicious, it's nutritious, and I hope everyone gets a chance to enjoy food, the food that they're meant to savor, considering our wonderful evolutionary design. So thank you so much, Darryl.
Thank you for having me, and the offer for a ski trip, a mountain bike trip, or an salt mine tour. And if we're lucky, we can do all three in the same trip.
And some fishing.
And some fishing.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.